Does anybody know we're on?
Well, they will do when I've sent a link out. But hopefully those people around. I can see the live chat is there. Everything is here. What more could you want from a Wednesday afternoon?
Mr. Whippy's ice cream. That's what I want.
How are you, Phil?
I'm good. It's Wembley week. We're excited. Always excited on Wembley week.
Because we're supposed to be negative and go, Wembley's rubbish these days. But it is exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the forecast is looking set fair, and Wembley always looks better in beautiful sunshine, and I think the 45,000 people there is going to be something a bit special as well. And I'm really looking forward to the first game, York and Feathers tonight. We've got a genuine double header. So yeah, I am looking forward to it. Wembley week should always be big in the calendar. I think part of the problems we've got at the sport at the moment is we don't bull ourselves up. In fact, just looking at a statement from a Super League chairman, we're just intent on bringing ourselves down at the moment. Other than if we live in France, which is incredibly positive, or Wales, who are doing some great things.
They're playing games in Scotland as well. So Scotland got mentioned on the rain. The rain sent a tweet out about it because I retweeted it. I didn't listen to what she said, but there is some positivity around, which is good. He's excited.
Deservedly so. No, deservedly. I think, hopefully tomorrow's formal announcement that the World Cup is on is a big boost for the game. There may be conditions attached to that. We'll know in the morning what sort of side, if any, Australia are bringing and what the contingencies are if they don't. But that doesn't matter, because I think if they are saying 100 days out, tickets back on sale, World Cup's on, that we should be excited about that prospect. I think it offers us huge opportunities. I'm not buying into this if the Australians can't send their very, very best players. It devalues the competition. Quite the reverse. In fact, yesterday late evening, I watched the end of a cricket match.
I think we lost you briefly, but I think you're back.
I'm back. Did I ever go away?
Yeah, I can see you. Let me move you around. There you go. Put me about there.
I was in the middle of saying I was watching a cricket match last night, the end of which was very exciting. I had to see lots of kids who were enjoying the outcome, and apparently that wasn't the first team available. So
no, it's very much the England second or third string, wasn't it? And Ben Stokes, and obviously he's quite good. I saw him; he won the World Cup and everything.
But it didn't detract from the enjoyment, and to the non-knowing, it was an incredibly competitive game. The spirit of sport was on display. Kids were getting really excited watching their team win. It didn't detract at all from a full stadium at Edgbaston, and I would like to think that yes, of course, we're appealing to the aficionados when the World Cup comes around, and they'll be mulling over would Ryan Papenhuyzen made any difference to creating or stopping a try. But actually, as long as it's a competitive tournament, bring it on. We need it desperately.
I used the example yesterday about going to the Rugby Union World Cup, which hilariously, of course, I got accreditation for, was it 2015, and saw two games at Headingley, which were Leeds, two games at Ellen Road even, which was Italy versus the USA and Scotland, Canada, or some combination of those four teams. I could not tell you how any of the people were involved because I was just there on a freebie. I'm sure many of the people there who bought tickets were just there to see an event and have no idea if any of the people there were top quality Rugby Union players or not, especially being the four nations that were involved. Tonga, Italy at the World Cup in 2013, our World Cup. How many people knew anyone who wasn't Fui Fui Moi Moi in that game? And they all seem to enjoy themselves in Halifax. I seem to remember that one.
Well, I seem to think as well that the work that Jamaica and Lebanon will do when they're over here transcends whether they're actually going to win the tournament or not. They're going to appeal to a group of people, say they're wearing our colours, we'll go and support them, and we'll have a great day. And I think the word that you just used then should be the criteria by which we use to promote this event, and that promote this, and that is event. We need to have more events. Why are we excited about it being Challenge Cup final weekend this weekend? Because it'll be an event, because there'll be 6 hours on a terrestrial broadcaster that will put the sport front and centre. And looking at all of the teams who are playing, they all have a propensity to play attractive and open rugby, so it should be a great spectacle. Now, it's a shame for all the copywriters that Sione Matautia won't be there, so we won't have brother against brother. It's not going to detract from the event. If in the unlikely event that one or other of the teams have a late call off or cry off or worry about who is fit or eligible and they have to draft a young academy player in, it's not going to detract from the event.
I even saw an advert. Oh, hang on, let me. I've got to work out how to do the audio on this. I even saw an advert before Newsnight last night. I don't know why we had BBC Two on for the Challenge Cup final with those cartoon people climbing up Wembley. Well, much like normal people were doing on Sunday, apparently, but legally this time. So they are promoting it on the BBC because obviously there's a big crossover between Newsnight and the Super League show.
I think Tyrone Mings was tuning in. And we'll want to know there's another big sporting event at Wembley.
He's our hero now, but there you go. It is exciting. 1895 Cup final on before this time, which will be good because at least people will see them, whoever the winners are, Featherstone or York, lifting the trophy, because when we were there a couple of years ago, only the Sheffield Eagles and, well, a few Winners fans who stayed around, and we can't blame them, were there to see the trophy lifted because everyone had gone home.
And it would appear that there isn't a schools game this year, because if there is, it hasn't been included on the itinerary. Probably would be starting about now if there was. But no, kick off at 12. It's on the BBC Red Button. I think the follow up to that will clearly be on the main channel. They'll show the highlights. They may even get to interview the man of the match. However, it's going to work. This is the last weekend of not really being sure about. Is everything going to be Zoom and mixed and all that kind of thing? Hopefully all of that is coming to an end. You'd hope safely as well. It won't be absolutely 100% the norm, but it will be exciting.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen after. Next week, Monday, when normality returns, which is exciting. But 45,000 there on Saturday. I assume it's going to be a sellout. I can't imagine it wouldn't be. Castleford there for the first time since 2014. Featherstone there for the first time since 83. York don't really exist. So,
1931.
Saints a couple of years ago, but they haven't won it for a dog's age. Plenty of story. I know we've lost the big story of the pre-match, and everyone's disappointed because the disciplinary did their job. But there should be plenty of stories coming out of it, at least anyway.
Absolutely. I think if St Helens win, it could well be the last time people like James Roby, maybe Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook, obviously Lachlan Coots moving on, Kevin Naguama. There's a sense that this St Helens team, it's almost a last chance saloon for them to win at Wembley in this current guise. Castleford, clearly, it's the end of the Darryl Powell era. What better way for him and people like Ollie Holmes and Peter Matautia to leave with the trophy that I think they're performances since 2014 when they were last there, and clearly were overawed by that occasion. It's a chance to sort of say, this era that will come to an end. Darryl Powell's reign bought a trophy, which it deserves. So whichever team wins, there's a story. I think the thing about the 1895 Cup, and we've said it a lot on this programme, is there has to be something for clubs to aim at who aren't in a position perhaps in the immediate future to be in Super League. Now, that doesn't detract in any way from the fact that Featherstone are unbeaten in the Championship and could well win promotion to Super League at the end of this season. But I think what we're talking about is a concept whereby they get something meaningful to play for at the National Stadium, which is more under their control. And certainly if you look at the Shane Richardson plan that was talked about this week, Featherstone wouldn't be involved in Super League in the future. Not saying his plan is going to be implemented or even debated, but they have an occasion that they can call theirs. They'll have a hard core of support there. I'm sure a lot of fans will get there early to get their Yorkshire value for money, 2 for the price of 1. And if the weather's great, there's certainly now loads of places around Wembley where you can buy food and drink. It'll be a great day out, and I'm either of those clubs win, it's a major deal for them. So York are on a building process. It's really not working for them in the league at the moment. But I'm not sure they'll be that bothered if they could win at Wembley and come back to their new stadium, put a trophy in the sideboard. For Featherstone, it could just be a culmination of everything they're doing right at the moment under James Webster. So great stories for both games.
Yeah, apologies that there's no 1895 build-up on the website. I forgot the on the YouTube channel. I forgot the presser was on Tuesday. I didn't read the email properly. I read to the bottom bit and I missed the bit about the 1895 Cup final. But I'm sure both Messrs Webster and Ford said plenty of interesting things in the build-up, and I'm sure you can imagine what they did.
I think they love each other.
Oh, that's good.
And they respect each other. And funnily enough, each of those coaches wants their respective team to win. So there you go.
Can't wait to see who leads them out at Wembley on Saturday. We'll talk more about the Cup final in a bit. The World Cup is coming, and we expect tomorrow it will be announced that it's happening. I think, well, we expect it because it's been in the papers everywhere. Apologies for the dogs, by the way. But it's coming. Whether the Australians are or the NRL-based players are coming remains to be seen. But a World Cup is going to happen, and it can't not happen, Phil, because there's nowhere else in the calendar to play it next year because the Football World Cup's on, and I don't know if people have noticed, but the Football World Cup, slightly a bigger deal than our World Cup, unfortunately. It has to be said. So we have to get it in and get it done, and if they're not coming over, they're not coming over, and sorry, we'll just play it anyway.
Well, there's a couple of big events scheduled for here in 2022, including the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So I think that unique space that we would occupy after the Soccer Euros has been the next big thing, backed by the government, hopefully by October, November, a little bit more certainty about what's happening over here with vaccinations and getting hold of a Delta variant that is causing no end of concern at the moment, and games still being called off. The Australians are sending a team to the Olympics. They're all wearing, lovely kits that's green and gold. And somebody Australian just won at Wimbledon. There is absolutely no reason why, in terms of the safeguards that are being met for the players and the officials, the charter flights, the resort book locations for quarantine, that they can't come over. The issue seems to be, as exemplified by Blake Solly today, who again is taking that view of I put my club first. Certain clubs do not want to release their players because they won't be back early enough for them to do a pre-season, which is nonsense. Now, again, if the ideas of commissions genuinely do have power and influence, then I think that's why this will go ahead, because the Australian Rugby League Commission will say, as a body, we back the World Cup. We can't force players to go if they don't want to. We can't stop individual clubs putting pressure on their players not to go. But I think we know, and we've spoken about this before, there are certain coaches who are very, very pro-European competition. I can't imagine for a moment that Wayne Bennett would turn around to a player that's under his charge and say, do you know, I'd rather you were here 2 weeks early for a trial in Maitland against St George rather than representing Australia in a World Cup. He's a massive internationalist. I think Craig Bellamy is as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Nathan Cleary is. So as long as we can get the bulk of the players released, there then becomes a groundswell where other players start saying, but I want to go. I don't see you can deny me this opportunity. And I have a feeling that that's how it'll work out, that the ARLC will sign the participation agreement on behalf of Australia. The clubs will then fight amongst themselves as to who are going to release players, who's going to pull a hamstring in training. But we will get a World Cup and they will be there.
Is that one of those injuries that waste time at the end of games that Adrian Lamb's upset about?
Well, he's only voicing concerns that I think we've all said. And, I think you can identify teams that do it perhaps more of natural course than others. I wouldn't ever say that a coach instructs his players to go down and feign injury, but you are taught at certain points of the game, slow it down, take control of things. Well, one of the ways you do that, you can never get that damn lace done up, or that hamstring that's troubled you is just pulling a little bit, or don't go near your head because then you might have to come off for an HIA. But I think it's an issue that needs to be looked at, but goes back to Mr. Carter and what he said. He clearly has no faith in the disciplinary process. So what can we expect about jurisdiction over players who may or may not be feigning injury to time waste?
No one seems to have any faith in anything in rugby league at the minute, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the people running the game, whether it's Super League, whether it's this, that, or the other. No one seems to have any faith in anything. Who do people want to or see the governance of the sport? I guess this goes back to the Shane Richardson plan, I guess, doesn't it? But the thing I don't understand with the complaints about the judiciary this week is a lot of them seem to have been based on the fact that a man doesn't get to play against his brother in the cup final, which is completely irrelevant as to whether someone is... I've not seen the incident, so I'm not commenting on anything that has gone on. But the disciplinary don't just throw a 6 to start and make things up as they go along, do they? So something must have happened for him to be banned for the cup final. I don't know what, but it must have happened.
But again, it's not as though St Helens haven't accepted it. They aren't, as far as I can say. I haven't seen any comment from them about, they appealed. They got the sentence halved. The problem for the player was that he was on a 2-match ban, so he still can't play in the cup final. The issue seems to have been raised by the opposition that night. All it shows, and as you say, it may well be justified, is first of all, if you are going to have a crackdown on anything, everybody's got to buy into it. And if that is head injuries or late tackles or protecting players and all the issues around concussion and that kind of thing, then as a sport you have to sit round in a dark room and go, we've got to support this, we've got to back this, because the bigger picture is more important than an individual one that went through a judiciary process which is independent. I mean, again, it's not the incidents themselves, it's the criticism of the process of how they've been judged. And I think one is run by the RFL, the other are Super League clubs that are feeling whatever the situation is at the moment, that they need to say and do things to protect their own empire, preserve things going on in that, and that's why it looks fractured. And one of the things Shane Richardson did say, and I'm not saying his plan is without flaws, although it does look very much along the lines of what Brian Noble was talking about, that everybody's starting from the point of view of independent commissions seem to work. One of the reasons that you would want an independent commission is that clubs then are isolated in what they say, because the commission is making the decisions for the betterment of the sport as a whole. And that's where we're not in this country at the moment. Unfortunately, we need to cure that as quickly as possible. And Ken Davey as well had a press conference and was talking about realignment without actually defining what that was, and without looking at the possibility that a commission might be an alternative way of governing the sport. If we're not prepared to look at stuff like that, you are always going to get chairman breaking ranks or chief executives or owners saying this isn't right or that isn't right. It's not a great look for the sport. You can understand why they do it, but it shows a disunity across the spectrum. In France, I think we've got the opposite. We seem to have a president of the French Federation who has a very clear view of what he wants to achieve in the next 4 years, which part of which is bring a World Cup to his country. But it's not just that. He's talking about ages 3 to 93 playing the game. That seems to be a progressive nation at the moment, where there will be dissent behind the scenes, but it's in the DNA and nature of the French. They will argue over a baguette and a cup of coffee, but at the moment the appearance from the outside is that they're moving forward, that their participation targets are moving, that they genuinely want to come together to hold a global event. It feels a bit the same in Australia, where clearly not everybody agrees with what Peter V'landys is doing, but again, they salvaged an Origin game today. They had a sellout, or as near a sellout as you can have for a game that was a dead rubber. That they've moved all 12 teams into Queensland. Now, clearly, the cost involved in that we couldn't replicate over here, but they've done it. They've salvaged their competition. The players may well do stupid things and eventually get ejected from their particular bubble, but 12 teams have decamped for anything up to a month to ensure that the competition goes ahead. From the outside, that looks like unity. What we've got here at the moment is the exact opposite.
to steal something from Brian McDermott and to adapt it on the Alanis Morissette scale of 2 to 9 in terms of irony. There is no greater irony in rugby league at the moment than the team who's played the least number of games in Super League is Hull Kingston Rovers with 10, and that they've just parted company with someone who made stupid comments on social media. And now, as we're seeing, there is freedom of speech, but there's also freedom of there's consequences of that. And people need to realise that sooner rather than later, especially as what we've seen at the weekend. And we can't pretend that football's the only sport that has issues, because we know we do as well. CG says Michael Carter might have a point. It's my former boss, CG. Careful what you say.
He might have a point, but by making his point publicly, I don't think he trusts the process, and that's the concern.
He says, Mike Carter might have a point, but not sure the way to address that point is by a poorly written statement on his club's website makes the sport look amateur, brackets again. Well, you've got a point there, CG. I don't know if Michael listens to this programme anymore. I don't know. I know he's not on Twitter anymore, but it's... What happens next? Do we get the same situation as we had with Emma McManus's programme comments after calling out Rob Hicks after the cup final a couple of years ago, which, of course... he was sanctioned for, but we're just going to go around in an endless spiral of disciplinary makes a decision, someone criticises it, they get brought before the disciplinary and rinse and repeat.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you on that. I don't think we gain anything from it. And, the problem is, who do you turn to at the moment? Because the Super League bosses are feeling disenfranchised. They're finding a way to realign, whatever that means, with the RFL. Clearly, there are some issues with the RFL that they're realigning with. This would indicate that everything in the garden is not rosy. What we need is somebody to come forward and just say, look, this is how we're moving forward, and we're moving forward together. These are the issues that we're going to address. If you think the makeup of the disciplinary system is one of them, that goes into the fire and gets discussed, but it gets resolved by an independent commission,
which people will tear apart for being not independent, because they'll find something somewhere to criticise people for. But it's always interesting when people stick their head above the parapets and say what they're thinking. It's just a case of what happens with and what can happen. I'm not sure. I understand the frustration, but there's plenty of things to be frustrated about in this sport, and nothing ever happens with any of them. So I don't know. Interesting time. St Helens won that game 30 points to 14 on Friday night. I think Wakefield only had 17 players left, as Mr. Carter says in his statement. They will play this week against Salford, because even though they've only got 14 and they are a club with integrity. The hidden message there is that clearly he thinks there are clubs without integrity. Now, I think we're straying into the realm of there are clearly divisions and issues. The other thing today that's been announced is that Leeds have confirmed that they've lost £1.2 million in the last financial year. And again, whilst that's not unexpected and they have got the mechanisms to cope with that, it's a massive concern. And if the game can't get round the table and decide the way ahead and how it wants to run and what's in the best interest of the game as opposed to any club, that is a millstone at arguably one of the bigger clubs that must be being felt completely down the line by every club. Now, we know that part of Leeds' income comes away from rugby, and that's hurt them probably more than the furlough payments to offset player wage issues. But clearly, if a club the size of Leeds has got financial difficulties of that magnitude, the sport is not in a healthy place. At least that side of Headingley, the pitch is okay, as opposed to cricket, which had to be cancelled. They should never move it away from Scarborough. That's karma for you. That's karma. I'm trying to think of what else has happened before we get on to the match stuff, but it's kind of like the build-up to Challenge Cup final week. I've forgotten everything that's gone on. We talked about the sport looking amateur, again, as CG puts it, and certainly that's the case on Sunday when I was at the Mobile Rocket. And this is not Wakefield's fault, of course, that's just the venue, where I was looking forward to another double-header of Women's Super League action, as it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. Although on that occasion I didn't get to the ground. This time I'm there, sat in my place, 11:30, set up my laptop, ready to go. Players are out warming up from both teams, ready to go. Referees, match officials, all there, ready to go. No doctor. And the game was called off at 12:45. Castleford did a training session. Huddersfield went home. York and Warrington had to turn around because their game was cancelled later. To happen once is unfortunate, Phil. To happen twice in a month, it really shouldn't happen. The word I used was disrespectful. I think you could use stronger words: shambolic, disgrace,
scandalous.
Much more. Scandalous is right, and no, no one cares because it's the Women's Super League. It's not the Men's Super League. It's not on telly. But had that been the game on Twitch, say Bradford versus Wakefield on Monday, which was delayed for whatever reason, say that had been postponed when they've gone on air, how does that make the sport look to new people who are discovering the game?
Well, I think, again, you've hit the nail on the head at the beginning when you said, to happen once is unfortunate. You then put procedures in place to make sure it cannot happen again. Conspicuous absence of explanation, and not just that there wasn't a doctor, but why for a second time there wasn't a doctor. Now, clearly, the health service is suffering at the moment with the amount of COVID cases that every day. It could well be that at the very last minute, the person who was intended to be the doctor, for very, very good reasons, couldn't make it. But, having happened once before, what is the contingency and backup plan? Even if at very short notice, the designated person can't make it. Now, again, I think if you're going to call it Super League, which it is, you're gonna sell it to the likes of Twitch. You're going to have the highlights on Sky every week. You're building up to a grand final of which all of these teams technically can still make that grand final. You're devaluing and undermining it by not being able to play those games. There is an issue with Sky almost embarrassingly glossing over in the men's game 24-0 results when they've got to explain what that is and why it is and how it's happened. And people are now a little bit more accepting when they hear the word COVID, that games are postponed. What nobody can understand, if it's an elite division of sport, is games that are awarded because teams couldn't raise the requisite number to play. You're undermining the whole idea of it being elite in that respect. It's the same with the women's game. You'd never want to see either an awarded game or a postponed game because a doctor couldn't be in situ at the time, so the match couldn't go ahead. If you want to make yourself look amateurish, sometimes we go about it the right way. That comes back down as well to governance and investment, because part of the idea of an independent commission is that it allows external investors who won't invest when the system is as it is at the moment, because they need power to go with their money. They need to make decisions as to what the competition is going to look like that they invest in. It's a very fine line between getting the right kind of investment that will bail you out and the same level of investment that will move your sport forward to everybody's liking. But who is going to invest when they say that games couldn't go ahead because a doctor couldn't be found, or that were awarded 24-0 because even though they've got 30-odd man squads, they couldn't raise a team?
And it may well, I won't say may work out well for Castleford in the end, because I'm assuming they would have beaten Huddersfield anyway, but they only had 15 players due to injury. So, again, we've got that situation there. Leeds beat Wigan 28-6, and Helens beat Fev 78-0. Bradford beat Wakefield on Monday on Twitch, but Wakefield scored, which was good.
And got very excited when they did, which is good to see.
I think you can see there that
your friend Liv again, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can tell there's no lack of effort, there's no lack of spirit. The results obviously aren't happening. That's clear to see, but they're still giving it a go, which is good. As we said last week, it's a mismatch of a competition which doesn't really know what it is at the minute. It's interesting now, Leeds having beaten Wigan, and Wigan play York this week, and York beat Warrington last night. I think it's 62 or 64-0. That was York's first game since the cup final because of games being called off for COVID and other reasons. So, important game. Leeds take on Huddersfield on Sunday. Saints take on Wakefield. Oh, bloody hell. I think I might hide on Sunday. But Leeds, chances are will go 7 wins from 7 at the top of the table. And because Saints had to forfeit that fixture against York, and I am extrapolating way into the future here, it may mean that Leeds would avoid Saints until the final, which they probably would have done anyway. But it's interesting times the Women's Super League. I just hope they can sort some doctors out. So next time I go to the Rocket, I see some games, or somewhere at least anyway. I'm trying to think of what else has happened in the world of rugby league. And bar the excitement of the World Cup's going to happen.
Hunslet have lost their coach.
And their chairman.
And their chairman, who I think felt that the manner in which the coach was relieved of his duties probably didn't reflect as well on the club as he would have liked to, being an ex-player. Leeds have got a statue of the great John Holmes, which was a very emotional day. David Ward was brilliant unveiling it. His family were clearly very tearful, and I would mention to any fan that is going to Headingley now when crowds come back from Monday, just go and have a look at it, because it may be a Leeds icon, but it just is something that fans can. Statues are really important at stadiums, I think, and something that fans can arrange to meet at, rally round, look at the history of a club, feel the game is all encompassing and embracing, and every club should have a statue to their greatest player. Difficult for those that don't own their own ground, I get that, but in 131 years of one of the most famous sporting venues in this country, to have its first statue, it was a big event.
Tell me about him, Phil, because I'm not a Leeds fan, so I don't know much about him or his legacy, or why is he, of all the players in history, and of course we've just gone through the golden generation. Shut up, Doc. We've all seen Leeds' greatest side playing recently, but why above everything is he Leeds' greatest player?
Well, one of the ways you measure things like that is the number of games played at the highest level. So he played 625 matches for the then Loiners, which is 82 more than any other player has ever played. So in terms of 21 years of service and playing in 19 finals and winning 14 of them, and being the maestro in the winning of a lot of those 14, his playing record in terms of longevity and success speaks for itself. You add into that, he was a World Cup winner in 1972, the last time that Great Britain won the competition. He was playing standoff. Not too many players have got that on their CV, and certainly not too many Leeds players have got that on their CV either. So that elevates him from a playing point of view. But I think it's all about what he represented. He came from Kirkstall, which from where his statue is positioned, you can actually see. He used to walk to the ground. He was the most humble, modest and reluctant of people. Very rarely did an interview, very rarely stayed after a game. Once he'd had his pint, washed down his meal, he was back home. Just the way he played, I think, and what he stood for, epitomised everything that's best about the sport. And there was a tribute lunch afterwards where some of the people who played against him were equally in awe of him and his talent and his humility as those who played with him, who held him in such special regard. So I think when the local hero embodies everything a club stands for, when they're the player who's represented that side more than any other, when they've had success that is the equal of virtually everybody who's ever played for the club, it sort of was the obvious choice. And even Neil Fox was there lauding him, so it must be right.
And as you say, he was not on the Wembley statue again, which we have to mention at this point. But as you say, for people who will now go to Headingley and see that statue, those who saw him play can tell those who didn't exactly how great he was, and that's how important these things are.
Yeah, and I think again it's about the game of rugby league that the more personalities that are captured for posterity, be it Billy Boston now down in Wales when they do their a code breaker statue, whether it's somebody turning up and wondering why Martin Affire's on his knees with his face in his hands at Wembley. It's storytelling, I think those of us that have been fortunate enough to be at other sports grounds. The finest example, I think, is the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which has a statue about every 5 paces. But you stop and you read the plaque and you look at the date, and they're not all cricket. Some of them are AFL, and it tells a tale. And if you're interested in context and history and the shoulders of giants, it's really, really important that we do preserve all this kind of thing.
Like Jimmy Hill at Coventry. It's all the people can see when the World Cup comes around in the autumn. It's a nice statue, and it's a good, and it's good because I've seen pictures of John Holmes. It looks like him as well, because a lot of these statues, you have to ask who they are, even if there's a thing underneath. But the artist has done a very good job on that, and I look forward to seeing it in person next time I'm at Headingley, which it feels like a long time since I've been there now.
I think you'll be impressed because it's 8 foot high on a Yorkshire stone plinth, so it commands that car park area just in front of the south stand, and wherever you walk it looks slightly different, which is an absolute gift of the sculptors, that he's holding a ball ready to pass it, and if you stand on the left hand side of him, you almost feel that ball is coming to you. So I'm biased, clearly, but I think it's, Steve Winterburn, who did the Wembley statue as well, and he's going to be doing the Code Breakers one in Wales. It's taken 7 years, and he has done a sensation. I don't think we appreciate how hard it is to go from a 2-dimensional photographic image to a 3-dimensional 1.5 times or 1 point whatever times size it is, 3-dimensional. But he's captured it. He's got it.
Is there any other news that we can think of other than the Hull Derby being postponed again, which seems to be an annual, a weekly event now? Will the Hull Derby be played now?
And again, I think the issue with that is, if they can't get it into the season, then that is a huge money spinner that clubs are desperate for, are going to miss. I don't think there would have been any. We said last week, I think, that we haven't been particularly flexible when the restrictions were extended for an extra month, that we could have, just chopped a round of loot fixtures, take one of these midweek rounds away, lessen the load on all clubs. And we've got another one coming up in a fortnight's time, which is absolutely frightening, that teams are, playing Thursday and Sunday, and there's going to be no time for rest. But what we should have done was identified the fixtures that haven't been played, or the ones that are most lucrative, and done a redraw for the last couple, 2 or 3 rounds when we know that there is an element more certainty. Teams are not going to play each other the number of times they'd anticipated. Loot fixtures and Magic, should we now be looking at playing Hull and Hull KR at Magic weekend? All right, people have bought a ticket, but they haven't bought a ticket necessarily to watch the fixtures that those two teams are in. If you're serious about generating revenue for the sport, selling out or getting as near to a sellout as you can of St James's Park when Magic comes around, do we need to look at playing Wigan and St Helens on that weekend, Hull and Hull KR, and go back to the matches that will attract the most fans? I'm not sure the sport this year, when you read what Adam Pearson was saying a month ago, can afford not to have a Hull KR Hull Derby somewhere in its fixture calendar. Looks like we might not. Another game that's going to be missed, I don't think, because I just can't see anywhere it can be replayed. Leeds and St Helens. Well, again, that is a game that will draw a big crowd. I think we need to look at what we can't rearrange and just say, are there some fixtures that are more important than some of those that are scheduled? And let's change it. Last year we changed fixtures with almost 2 days' notice, and they still went ahead. There's no reason why we can't do it.
We talk about being creatures of habit, and obviously people are getting back into the habit of going to watch rugby league games, whether it's Super Leagues, League One, Championship, whatever. But the fixture list at the moment, it reminds you of the way football was at the end of the season. Liverpool won the league when COVID first started, and pretty much all of last season, where there's football on all the time. And you're completely lost as to what's going on. I've got no idea what's going on in Super League. I know obviously we're supposed to have a game on Thursday. We got 3 games on Friday that weren't supposed to be there. And you feel sorry for London Scholars, who would have got their biggest crowd of the year against Doncaster, but now there's 3 Super League games going up against it.
Absolutely, and that's where we need to take a look at the widest picture and see what we can salvage that can create the most income for clubs rather than just fulfil a fixture. The concern as well is the number of teams the number of clubs that are now saying that they can barely raise or name a team. I think that there's another issue here as well, and as a fan, I'd be really interested to get your point of view, and anybody who's tuning in at the moment or who listens to this on the podcast later. Castleford went ahead and played Salford this week, even though You know, it was a struggle for both teams, and particularly the home side, to get a side out there. Went ahead, cast-blooded some youngsters. They got beaten by 70 points. They charged full match admission price for that. Would supporters of a club, you know, rather see that game be moved to a different date, or, you know, the structure of the season changed to accommodate clubs being able to put out their best team whenever they can on a weekly basis? Or would they rather cram in fixtures, play them for the sake of playing them, and actually be shortchanged by what they're seeing on the field?
The current situation does no one any good, does it? Whether it's teams who say they haven't got enough players, and I say, and I don't necessarily mean it in a questioning fashion, but the amount of teams who are loaning out players here, there, and everywhere, and then can't raise a team, and there's this happening. And I know you don't want to throw in a load of academy kids, as Castleford necessarily did at the weekend, but if you've got an academy, I don't know. I mean, we go back to I guess it goes back to Castleford now, doesn't it? Because Liam Watts came out on Saturday and Jordan Turner's folding him in, saying it. You know, stop testing us. That's why games are being called off. But it's not as simple as that, is it? And there's a reason why people are being tested. It's not necessarily because they've got COVID or they're going to be in an ICU tomorrow. It's the people who they come in contact with who could be more symptomatic. It's a complicated world that we're trying to make simple, but we can't make it simple.
No, and then you look at the scenes at Wembley at the weekend for the football, and you go, well, how can you relate that to the fact that, you know, players who may have come in contact with somebody are not allowed to play? I think the other thing we've got to bear in mind is the game that we play, and how fit you've got to be and resilient to play this game. So I think the first mistake we made was the fixture list we came up with. It's in our power to still change some of that. We need to do that, and we need to make sure that, as you say, you know, one of the things that I think detracts from the integrity of the competition, whatever that means, however it's defined, is that when players are now being loaned out to 3 or 4 different clubs. So you look at somebody like Ellis Robson at Warrington. I've now lost track who he's playing for, because it seems that every week he's being loaned to somebody. And again, if you're a fan of that team, or you're talking about how meaningful the competition is, that can't be right. Now, we changed the laws on there is no minimum loan spell. So somebody literally could play for one team on a Monday and another team on a Wednesday, which, again, to me, undermines the integrity, whatever that means, of the competition. I think, you know, we're looking at, you now can waive the minimum amount of money that you pay a Super League player, which again means that young academy kids are going to be exploited without reward just for the sake of getting bodies on a pitch. And you know, is it more acceptable that the result is 70 points to 18, or is it more acceptable that we play a requisite number of games that make sure that every game that's played is the best it can be, and not playing a game for the sake of playing a game? Huddersfield, again, probably through no fault of their own, I've only named 16 players so far, in the hope that some others will be sanctioned to play by the RFL, because either their COVID time has run out, or they're passing HIA, or whatever it might be. If we're scrabbling around at the top level to stage games, then something is wrong, and somebody needs to get hold of that, and rather than wait for the Ken Davey to begin his negotiations of realignment, say, no, I'm sorry, this is how it's got to be from now on, and it's in consultation with all of the bodies that need to be a part of this, and we have to have the best we can be, and not just games for the sake of games.
Can't they loan someone in from the Championship teams that aren't playing this week, or League One? See, there's no minimum. You know, just nick someone from Keighley, for example. Oh no, they are playing. Where's near Huddersfield? Oldham. There you go. That's near Huddersfield. I've seen it on the M60 or Swinton. Just nick someone, stick them on the bench. Should be all right. It's just, we shouldn't be in a situation where top-level teams don't have enough players. I can accept it in lower divisions because they've obviously got financial pressures. But knowing that we know that Sky give the Super League all this money and the clubs get all this money and they can't pick a squad, I just can't buy into it. And it makes everything look amateurish more than anything else. I can take Castleford women can't get 17 players. Fair enough, right? They are amateurs, right? We know this. We know it's called Super League, but they're amateurs, so we'll accept that. But Super League clubs naming 16 players. Come on. You can take bodies from somewhere. Maybe Watson can put the boots on. I don't know.
It's in danger of devaluing the competition, and that's what we've got to guard against, because we have responsibilities to our sponsors and our fans. The people who've donated their season tickets back this year deserve better.
Well, the Super League can have to sort it out somewhere down the line. I mean, the problem is I have a great deal of sympathy with the theory that Watson, Turner, etc. are putting out there, because they could potentially miss out on a Challenge Cup final or a Grand Final or whatever. I understand that frustration, but it's not anyone's fault. None of this is anyone's fault, but the clubs can make things better for themselves, but sometimes choose not to. What can you do? We can't do anything.
To me, it just all seems rudderless, and that would be the worrying concern.
Who governs Rugby League?
Who should govern Rugby League?
I don't know. Should it be the speaker? Get the speaker in again. I don't know. Don't mix politics and sport.
Politics is sport.
That's what the politicians say. Don't mix politics and sport when we don't agree with what we're saying. So Salford beat Castleford 70 points to 18, which is a great result for Salford. Not a good result for Huddersfield, and less so for Lee, who Lee, who sent two of their, would assume, biggest name players to Huddersfield for a kid and somebody else who didn't want to go, so he stayed. Well, that's a very bizarre transfer.
Well, they wanted to release their two overseas players to sign two more players from overseas. I don't know how they're going to get here at the moment, or get a visa, or when they're quarantined, when they're actually going to play. So I'm genuinely mystified as to why that is a good move for both those parties. But again, shows you that the situation we're in at the moment is another really good reason why you perhaps look at what Rugby Union have done and say, there isn't automatic relegation this year, because everybody's experiencing things that they could not possibly have planned for. If you're going to have promotion, then we're going to have a 13-team division next year. It won't be ideal. We've got less money coming into the sport anyway, but it's equitable and fair, and we'll find a way around it. But yes. The plan is not for this year. The plan is for the next 5 years. So, if you don't institute it soon, or what you're going to do, then you're just treading quicksand until your head disappears underneath it.
Maybe Huddersfield can sign Andrew Fafita. Is he still around? I know he's not coming to Wakefield anymore. Maybe he can go to Huddersfield. They've got a few quid, apparently. You mentioned the future. Craig Lingard released a statement, as everyone does these days on social media, using their notes app on their phone. No one knows what's going to happen after the end of this season, and when are we going to find out? When is the plan going to be? The big plan for 2022 going to be announced? Are we just going to get through the World Cup? And as we've said before, this is your last chance to see. It's like a white rhino. The World Cup is your last chance to see Rugby League before it is extinct, which is not going to happen. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think the heartfelt issue is that clubs in the Championship and League One have done a fantastic job to not have games postponed, to keep it going, to have as credible competitions as they possibly can, and yet they don't know what distribution they're getting next year. And the earliest they will know will be sometime in August, and that is being decided by a group of people in the division above them, and it's not right. And it's never been right. And that's at the heart of, pleased as much by Craig Lingard, by the people behind Hunslet, who were saying, look, not only do we're unhappy about where we might be in the league table at the moment, because we wanted to be out of this division as quickly as possible, but you could be telling us that not only that, we don't have £75,000 central funding, which they currently get, which probably does pay for them for a year. Now, whether it should, whether it shouldn't, you got to tell people long enough in advance to plan for all of that, to look for alternatives, to decide as a business or a spectators cooperative in Hunslet's sense how they can continue. Salford have got issues with Are they going to have their ground? All of these things we need to be genuinely saying, what do we look like going forward? And if the pot is smaller and finite, how does everybody get something out of it that either makes them sustainable or they're given a plan of an exit route, so that they can still be the best they can be? Because you don't, any business and any individual cut off income at the knees at a stroke, it has catastrophic effects.
The sad reality
it's like cutting your international aid budget, just like that.
It goes back to the £1 million game and the ever annual debate about people are going to lose their jobs. The sad reality is there is no divine right, or whatever right you want to put it, for anyone to be a professional rugby league player, and unfortunately that might be the case here. I use the example of Wakefield Rugby Union Club again, because they were an established rugby union club for a long time, killed off because they had no money to support a professional rugby union club in the era they played, in part due to the fact that Bradford pulled out their funding, which is always amusing. But now rugby union doesn't exist as a professional or semi-professional sport in the city of Wakefield. Teams in sport go to the wall. They disappear. They have done since the first days of the Northern Union, and they will do until the end. Unfortunately, some clubs may have to make decisions that are tough, but we can't all chase the dream. We spoke about Coventry last week, and they seem to be a club from the outside who are well aware of where they are, and the same goes for London Scholars. We're well aware of where they are, what they can achieve, and how best to achieve that. And it's not throwing money at the wall and burning it on players. It's building sustainable futures, and maybe that's going to be the message for clubs outside Super League, that you have to build the foundations first. It may take you a long time. You may never get to Super League, but if you do that, at least you'll still exist and still be a vital part of the community. Not everyone can finish top of the championship.
Absolutely. No, again, if you don't have a strategy or a plan, all you're doing is delaying whatever the inevitable is. But what you do know is the inevitable doesn't look as good as the garden currently is. But it takes strong leadership, takes the ability to be unpopular if necessary for the greater good of all, not trying to pander to everyone, to making an honest decision about how you keep the sport at its highest profile, therefore bringing in its most money, and the mechanism for filtering that money down to as many levels as you can. Whether you decide that with the limited resource that there is, development officers are actually more important than necessarily central funding for clubs. All of that is a debate that, if we wait too much longer, we won't even have the ability to have it, because we won't have the resource to allocate. And the problem, as we've said for ages, from following what might be termed minority sports, once you lose your place in the window, you cannot get it back. And will survive, even if it's as a part-time sport in the north of England. But you can forget then all of the people that want to see the back page of the Daily Telegraph carrying rugby league every day, that want 50, 60,000 at a World Cup final, that, it's not going to happen. And it's all interrelated. And unless you tackle it from the very top and encompass all of this, then the loudest get what they want and everybody else scrabbles for a crumb off the table.
The good news for Salford, though, at least, if they've got the nation's shop steward in Gary Neville, who says he'll help them. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's going to be a story that rumbles on and on and on until there is some conclusion, whether that is them moving or... This is the problem when you don't own your own home. And it continues to be the case, and it will be forever. And the problem is, as soon as you lose that home, it's very hard to get another one back. Bellevue may be exactly what it is, and we all know it is what it is, but at least it's in Wakefield's hands to do whatever it is with it in the future. Same with Castleford at the Jungle, but as we've seen with Oldham and Swinton, and they're the nearest teams I can think, Rochdale as well for Salford, they should be looking in that direction, thinking, what do we do next?
Well, I also think it's about having minimum standards for everything. be that your accommodation, be that your academies, be that your match day presentation, whatever it might be. We have a document. We mentioned it ad nauseam that was brought out in 1994 that we have not ever implemented. If we implemented that tomorrow over a period of 2 years, we would be a better sport. We've got to have the courage to do it. And we've got to have people in charge who do not have vested interest, who will implement it and see it implemented and not pander to, but we've always done it this way and we'll be all right in a couple of years. It doesn't work that way anymore. It's the harshest of worlds out there at the moment economically.
We're a spot where people go on the internet and moan about Newcastle's pitch markings, as if forgetting that the rest of the ground is a perfect rugby ground. And I use that word with the right sense of it. I think that's all the news. I do think that is all the news now, unless there is anything I've completely forgotten about, which I don't think there is, other than transfer gossip, which we don't really comment on because it's usually rubbish. And you see, the things we get right on this programme, everything apart from transfers, usually. So we've talked about Castleford and Salford. Salford fans will be unhappy because we said, Salford had Castleford the kids in, but they did. And Salford won by 70 points to 18, which is great for them. Attendance not given. Catalans beat Leeds 26-18. This was on the telly. Leeds 18-8 up at half-time, but the Catalans came back in the second half. Arthur Morg and his try, the star performer. And the Catalans continue their route to Super League glory.
It was a great game as well. I think there was enough quality across the full 80 minutes for even neutrals to say there was much to admire. I thought the Catalan halfbacks were fantastic, of which Morg was one. Great combination of, Maloney directing the team around and Morg playing off the back of that. And he is a sensation. He could be anything. Their pack is tough. Went 8-0 up early on, looked like they were in total control. Great resilience and spirit from Leeds to get back to 18-8. Could have been one more score ahead, bombed an obvious opportunity. They may or may not have hung on if they had, but Catalan found a way to win it. And I think from a Leeds point of view, that if you were looking for consolation, played a lot of games, we know that, but the last 17 minutes, Catalan didn't score. Now that says a lot about the resilience and spirit of a side when they are absolutely out on their feet, that they were still scrambling for each other. So I think both teams got a lot out of that game, and I have to say that it's one of the matches this season that I really enjoyed watching it for the full 80 minutes. I thought there was a lot of quality, and 4 men suspended at the end of it, so it had a bit of everything.
Speaking of suspensions, Saints beat Wakefield 30 points to 14. Both teams going out with suspensions from that one. Very busy week at the judiciary this week. I haven't seen anything apart from the tries because I was working Friday, so I didn't go to the game. Unfortunately, because the women's games were off on Sunday, or the two I went to see, I was able to watch Wigan versus Huddersfield, which you say Leeds versus Catalans was one of the best games you've seen this year. Wigan versus Huddersfield on the telly. Tight game, only 4 points between the two sides, but it was a rubbish match, wasn't it?
Horrible, absolutely horrible. Great respect for anybody that plays this sport, particularly teams that don't have a long time to prepare because they don't know who's going to be playing. But no, there wasn't a lot to cheer about and admire and raise a glass to. It was a turgid watch for no other reason than they just looked like two exhausted teams whose players were not attuned to each other. Huddersfield, Adrian Lamb talked it up at the end, and so he should, but I wouldn't have done. I'd have gone on hidden in a hole. And guess what? They play each other again this week, this Friday. So we can look forward to the rematch of one of the worst games for a while. Huddersfield again could have pulled it out of the fire at the end. Pulled back for a forward pass that would have at least drawn the game, possibly. Taking it into golden point, and I don't think we could have stood another period of play. Great respect to the fans of both teams who can look for positives in their side's performance, but as a neutral, it was a shocker.
Yeah, I'm not blaming the players, just some games are rubbish. That's what happens. So I can't wait for them to play on Friday and ignore that one. So the Super League table, Catalans at the top, Saints second, Warrington, Hull FC, Wigan, Hull KR. We've only played 10 games. How many do they need to play to get into the playoffs? I can't remember. Leeds,
18, I think.
18. Ooh.
But they
Have
have
they squeezed
already
in
said
somewhere?
that could be changed. So,
In the Championship, Batley 12, Toulouse 32 was, the French remain on top.
And I think sound Roman Navarrete as well, which, again, beefs up a pack that is already too strong for that division by the look of it.
Halifax 14, Whitehaven 4. London beats York 50 points to 12. Big result for London, not so good for York.
Week before Wembley, though, I think you can put that down to.
Yeah.
But York are going to need some victories pretty soon.
Well, it's the thing, isn't it? All the eggs are in the Wembley basket at the moment, one assumes, but after Wembley, they're going to have to find some wins from somewhere. I mean, they're only 2 wins above Oldham, who, of course, did lose to Bradford that weekend 54-22, but they've got coaching mastermind Brian McDermott there now, and I don't know what he can do in 5 days, but maybe with a couple of weeks behind him, he might be able to put something together. You don't know.
I'm pretty sure as well that when he looks at their fixture list, he didn't earmark the Bradford game as one that they could win. He'd be looking at, when are we playing Swinton, York, Whitehaven, Dewsbury, maybe Sheffield. And if we can pick up enough points or wins from those games, we can get out of this mess. But it's 2 getting relegated, and York are in that mix at the moment. I think the other thing is, if it isn't going to be 2 who get relegated, if we aren't going to have League One as it currently exists and the Championship as it currently exists next season because of the financial considerations. Again, every business, as these clubs are businesses, needs to know that now and not after the season's finished. If there are going to be, significant implications, whatever that means for teams that have called games off without having the COVID threshold, we don't want to hear about that 3 weeks after the season's finished. We need to know that next week. So if it alters the league table, what that actually means. And I noticed the RFL said about that there were going to be points deductions, but as things are done on percentages, I'm not sure what a points deduction actually means.
Can they not wins off?
I don't know.
Newcastle.
Whatever you're going to do it quickly.
Newcastle beat Dewsbury 24-12, Swinton 22, Sheffield 30, and Widnes 10, Featherstone 32. So Featherstone 12 from 12. They are the team. They've just played more games than Toulouse, but it's not Toulouse's fault as opposed to. No, anyway.
But they face each other. Is it next week? That's going to be a massive game.
League One, only 3 games because Workington Coventry was off. Keighley beat Barrow 40 points to 12. Hunslet 24. North Wales Crusaders 34. So getting rid of the coach didn't work there.
Massive result for Keighley. That put their season totally back on track. Barrow's first defeat, and I think that again Scott Morrell was, I think was quite important in that win. I saw him. Something on social media. We'll probably find out now he didn't even play, but just having him around that club will have an effect, and that is a massive win for the Cougars.
He's like a lower league legend.
A big win again for North Wales at Hunslet, which took them above Hunslet in the table.
I'm trying to find if he played now, but
tell me he did.
Yeah, no, he did.
Good. Well, apparently he was influential if he did on the field as well as he's being off the field.
And West Wales 18, Rochdale 30. So it appears West Wales are heading in the right direction in terms of points. But the world's oldest team, Rochdale, Fufu Moimoi scoring a try, as mentioned earlier. So Rochdale with the win. They're level with North Wales, 5 wins from 10. Keighley just above them, 5 wins from 9. So tight division, that League One. Especially as you
lots
say,
of play for. Yeah. But these clubs need to know what the future holds for them soon, really soon.
Cup finals this week, I think, is where we head as we head towards the end of the programme. 1895 Cup final first. We've got the bang-in form Featherstone versus the bang-out of form York. And on paper, this looks like it's going to be a simple game. But the form book, I'm just looking for it now. I'm going to throw it out there. I've got the form book here. I should have written form out the window because it's Wembley and anything could happen, as we know. But I think anyone with a cursory look at the way these teams have been travelling would think it would be a Featherstone win on Saturday lunchtime.
I think it probably will be, but the one thing that York will be holding their hat on is they have a lot of experienced players in their ranks who played in finals or been in big games, and that might just tip the scales, because whilst Featherstone clearly are the side that you would put your money on if you had a shilling to spare, Wembley in the sun with 45,000 people in can do funny things to players who haven't been there before. So I wouldn't rule York out. I think if they can get a performance out of the likes of Danny Kerman, Ryan Atkins, Adam Cuthbertson, Kieran Dixon, it's not a foregone conclusion that that level of experience, if they can keep themselves in the game long enough, that could be the difference. I think you'd say Featherstone are going to be the favourites. I think you'd probably, at this stage, Wednesday night, will probably say they're going to win. But it wouldn't surprise me if York did.
The good news for Featherstone is, as opposed to York, if York do an open top bus tour around York, it'll take a couple of hours. Through Fev, it's just up and down that main street. So that's all it'll take them if they win. And they're allowed back in their bar to celebrate, which is the other good news for Featherstone. Before I get in trouble. So I think I've been banned from Featherstone. I think half the Featherstone end is going to be full of members of my family as well, which is quite amusing. And that's followed by the Super Challenge Cup final, St Helens versus the Castleford Tigers. Peter Matauti today, who revealed to Forty20 TV in a question that I asked him that I didn't know that Mal really was from Cass. He thought he was from Newcastle, but he's from Castleford. And two teams with lots of history. Castleford obviously haven't won it since '86, been there a couple of times since. St Helens, I didn't realise they hadn't won it until the 50s for the first time, but obviously have this record now of just not being able to win the cup. And we saw Warrington beat them a couple of years ago. It was Refton Staley with the controversial decision that wasn't. I think all the pressure's on them this week, isn't it? Because they're expected to go in and win this. I guess a bit like Featherstone, they're expected to go in and win this one against a Castleford team who are in no form whatsoever. Forget the result of the weekend. Before that, they weren't in any form. Yet, I don't know. I don't know about this one.
I think that's the great thing, that you can make a case for both. I think what we do know is that, and isn't it amazing, they've never met each other in a major final either. So, that's adding to the history of both clubs. They both play rugby the right way. They're going to have the perfect stage on which to do it. It's going to be a fast track that will suit them. I can't see any delaying or slowing down tactics. When Cass beat Warrington in the semi-final, they went round them rather than through them. I genuinely have no idea who is going to win this. I think Cass have, ever since they got to the final, have been planning for the final. I think that makes them very dangerous. I think they've also got some memory of 2014 when they went to Wembley and the occasion overawed them. I don't think it will this time. I think there are still quite a few there with a memory of what happened in 2017 as well, which was a different sort of occasion. But again, on that big stage, they were found wanting. Well, quite a lot of those players, the likes of Ollie Holmes, who's leaving at the end of the year, they now know what to expect. It won't come as a surprise to them. They will be absolutely 100% focused. Saints have only played, once in the last 3 weeks, month? That's not ideal preparation, but they'll be fit and they'll be rested and they'll start with an intensity that more often than not, if they get it right and don't drop the ball, does tend to blow opposition teams away. But they looked fallible when they lost to Warrington. They weren't crash hot against Wakefield this week. They struggled to get over a very spirited Wakefield team. But there are some, as we said at the beginning of the programme, there's some players in that side as well who may be at their last opportunity to win at Wembley. I can't call it. I just think we're going to get a real spectacle. It could be high scoring. There could be a lot of skill on display. I think it'll be an intensity that we don't get week to week in Super League. I'm hoping that the 6 again rule doesn't have us all putting our head in our hands, because that gives the side so much possession that it counts. I won't use the word momentum in case Mr. Studd's watching. So I don't know, and I just think this is one. If you're not a fan of either team, you sit back and absolutely enjoy, because I'd be very surprised if this isn't the game that Rugby League needs at the moment.
Congratulations to Liam Moore, our former guest, who's going to be refereeing on Saturday. My mind always goes back to 2014 because it was the first game I did at Wembley as a professional broadcaster, as opposed to being a fan in the stands, which was 93. And I can't remember the fact that Winners had a player sent off. I was there and I can't remember it. I can remember a fire strike the year after, but I can't remember that. And the two things about the 2014 final that spring to mind as we speak about this one is Saints aren't going to play in the way Leeds did in kicking them to death, which Kevin Sinfield was a master of, because they just don't do that. Although I'm sure...
And we don't have scrums anymore, so it's just giving away possession.
Forgot about scrums.
They've got to come back soon, presumably if restrictions are lifted.
Well, especially with the World Cup coming, where they will be there, even if the Aussies aren't.
Not been mentioned yet, but I think that scrums will be back soon. That's
the tagline. Aussies aren't here, scrums are. Come watch the World Cup. But the other thing from the 2014 final was all the build-up from a Castleford perspective was based around, will Craig Hubie play or not? I know they've got players who are carrying knocks and whatever. I think Brett Millington's one of them. You would think that Darryl Powell would have learned from that experience that you can't go into Wembley, into a major final, with almost half a player, because if it goes wrong, as it did then, it's just a waste of time for everyone.
Wembley has always found out the players that are injured, not least if it's a really hot day. So, the likes of Gavin Miller, Keith Senior, there's an endless list of players who have played injured. The only man who consistently played injured and got away with it was Ellery Hanley, who every time he played at Wembley was Willie won't he, and then produced a piece of magic most times that he did play, unless he was wearing a Leeds shirt, clearly. But no, if you're injured, I mean, I would hope and expect that, although we haven't heard it yet, that Darryl has already told his players what the team is, to settle them down. You know, they'll be training exactly as they know they're going to be playing. And I think if he's learnt one lesson from 2014, that's it. And if your playmakers out, you find a way of coping with it. You don't wait until the morning of the game and give them yet another fitness test, play them and find that actually they weren't. So, no, I am so looking forward to this, because I think it's got all the ingredients of being everything that's best about Rugby League.
And for all the people who got very upset about the gamesmanship in the football at the weekend, don't forget that Wembley saw one of the greatest ever gamesmanship things in the history of sport, with Alec Murphy and scrums and stuff. So, you know, don't be...
and laying down in 1971 to get Sid Hines sent off.
Leeds have had enough luck at Wembley. It's all right. You were there last year when there was nobody there. Niall Levels was asked about this earlier, because obviously he played in that game, but it's going to be, obviously we've been to Wembley countless times, we know what it's like when it's full, but having been there last year, I'm guessing this year is going to be it's going to make us appreciate what we've gone through a little bit more, because we will be seeing not quite a full Wembley, and I don't know if we'll ever see a full Wembley again, but something approaching a normal Challenge Cup final crowd anyway.
And it's going to be a shock to the players, because don't forget, they've been playing without crowds for a very long period of time, and with restricted crowds. They will be blown away by suddenly playing in front of 45,000 people, and that may affect some of them, because again, psychologically, being in that stadium with everything that's at stake on the BBC all afternoon, teams have frozen before at Wembley for that exact reason, and all of a sudden going from playing in front of 3,500 that sound like 10 at their local stadium to 45,000 that sound like 80 at the national stadium, it's going to take a lot of getting used to. But even for those of us that are there, it's going to feel really, really weird, but in a good way.
Obviously, I am neutral. Wakefield not in the final. My nephew's going to Wembley for the first time. He's 7 and Cass are in the final. So when am I going to see Wakefield in the final? I'm 40. It's not fair. Answer, probably never. I just hope everyone who goes has a great day. All the players have a great match. The referees make no, contentious decisions. But I just want to say, I hope Tom Maguire has a really good day, because he was instrumental in helping us in our move from the other place to here, secretly at the time, because he was still being paid by them. But he was a key in us getting back on the air in this form. I'm not sure we're doing it justice at the minute in the way we are, but I really hope he has a good Wembley experience, and may the best teams win in the end.
And whoever deserves to be drunk on Saturday night, enjoy it.
Who are we going to vote for the Lance, Todd?
I think there's a lot of candidates, which is, again, another reason why I'm so looking forward to it. I don't know what the betting is. I've not seen who might be the favourites, but genuinely, this is the opportunity for someone to shine. And I have no idea who it's going to be. I would imagine that Paul McShane and James Rowe will be up there in the betting. Clearly, Johnny Lomax will as well. Jake Truman, you'd hope that he's fully fit, can exert his influence on the game. But this, again, could be a game where a winger scores a hat-trick, or centre pulls off a try-saving tackle, or a second rower like Ollie Holmes makes 7,000 tackles in the game. Louis McCarthy Scarsbrook, finally conquers his home city. There are so many people who could be a candidate, and, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it immensely. I don't know if it's come across tonight, but I am giddiest kipper waiting for it.
I'm really excited now. I can't wait. It's going to be a great day. And I think we'll all enjoy it, because there's too much. I know we get accused of being negative. There is plenty of negative things around rugby league, and we have to talk about them. But at least when we get to a big game, like the grand final last year, we were all excited for that, and it turned out to be the most amazing finish we've ever seen. And this, fingers crossed, is a good game, and everyone enjoys themselves. And whatever happens, hopefully some good news coming out of it in terms of the stories, and then we can focus on the negative again next Monday when we've got to rebuild the sport. But until Saturday, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, the highest number of points ever scored in a Challenge Cup final is 72. Have 5p that might be beaten this weekend.
And maybe someone can try score 4 drop goals, because 3 is the record held by the man who's not on the statue. Always goes back to that. Phil, thank you very much. I think we've spoken about everything. The new issue of Forty20 is not out this week. It's out next week.
Well, it's 2 things. One is it's a special issue. It's a 10th anniversary issue, which is ridiculous. But also we have to include everything that's going to happen in the Challenge Cup. So yeah, it'd be slightly later than normal, but it'd be worth it, because it'd be 84 pages.
84 pages. It's like the TV Times. I never knew there was so much in it. One for the teenagers. Phil, thank you very much. I shall see you on Saturday. I think we'll be doing some video from Wembley, because they can't throw us out. Because we saw the weekend. You can do whatever you want now at Wembley, so it'll be all right. We're going to get away with it. So have a good week. Fingers crossed everything is okay and everyone gets in the stadium okay, and whatever. And we'll see you all, if not on Saturday, on Monday, back in the usual place. I think we will be. Well, yes, and it'll all work. Let me press end stream and see if this ends the stream.